Welcome back. It's still the Morning Buzz on Voice of the People television. Nigeria is facing renewed security concerns following coordinated school abductions in Kebbi and Niger State. In Kebbi, Governor Nasir Idris questioned why military personnel withdrew shortly before bandits kidnapped students, despite prior intelligence. In Niger, gunmen attacked St. Mary's Catholic School after the institution ignored a government directive to remain closed due to heightened threats. Both Can and Catholic dioceses condemned the attacks as security agencies intensify rescue operations. The incident highlights a worsening nationwide insecurity crisis, with clerics like Primate Elijah Ayodele warning that kidnapping and killings have become routine due to overstretched security agency and poor coordination. Stakeholders, including political leaders, are urging urgent and decisive government action to protect schools and vulnerable communities. Amid this, Nigeria's concerns have drawn international attention. A delegation led by NSA Nuhu Ribadu met with U.S. defense officials following Donald Trump's controversial threat to send troops to Nigeria over alleged Christian persecution. This comes as Nigeria prepares to spend 6.57 trillion naira on security and defense in 2025, raising questions about effectiveness and accountability in safeguarding citizens. We have with us in the studio Dr. Peter Anosike, who is an analyst, a philosopher, development economist, and a best-selling author. He is also an erudite commentator on economy, finance, politics, and power. And joining us virtually is Barrister Eze Eluche, an attorney at law and also a public and political affairs analyst. We still have Comrade Ibrahim Momo, who is a lecturer and public affairs analyst, political commentator, as well as a human rights activist. Join us also from Benin City. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Comrade Ibrahim. Good morning, Barrister Eze Eluche.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me in your program today.
Good to have you join this conversation. Good morning, comrade. Without wasting much time, let me start off with you, Barrister Eze Eluche. The recent surge in insecurity in Nigeria, the recent killing, some people say for one whole week, that's 7 days, we've been hearing stories of abduction, of killings, and all that happening in Nigeria. What do you have to say about this, given the fact that we have a particular man who should have been a respected individual, though, George Akume, coming up to say that after since the declaration of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, and also Trump's statements that the unscrupulous non-state actors who have been killing Nigerians, terrorizing the whole country, more like they got emboldened to prove a point. What do you make of this, please? Just opposing it with what is happening in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. To briefly respond to George Akume, he's lying. He's lying in the sense that these killings, the kidnappings, abductions across the country has been happening. The only difference now is that with the U.S. Classification of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, journalists now feel free to report on it. Before, there was virtually an embargo on reporting this abduction, these killings. Then when you hear from the eyewitness, those who are on ground in Taraba, Nasarawa, Benue Plateau, they tell you these things have been going on a near daily basis. So the reportage has only increased because of the international attention, and everybody's now trying to get their own story on the front burner. But that's just so. George Akume is lying when he says that there has been an upsurge. This has been happening for quite a while, and Mr. President Bola Tinubu and his entire cabinet have virtually, but they left the whole. They didn't even bother. They didn't bother. If you recollect, it was only after the Pope Louis XIV's homily in the Vatican that Mr. Bola Tinubu visited for the very first time, a scene of mass casualties. That was in Yelewata. Otherwise, people will not even know about what happened in that city or that town, which is less than 5 kilometers from the Makurdi, the Benue State capital. Well, my reaction to what's been going on is this. We have, for too long, hidden realities, and now the realities have come to the fore. We have, from what you just reeled out about what happened in Kebbi State, where Governor Idris is now asking very serious questions who redeployed the military less than 30 minutes to the time the terrorists struck. Now, this is not the first time this is happening. In several instances of these attacks, of these mass abductions, the natives, the villagers who were attacked, have always said this, that the soldiers, the roadblocks were there, and when they left, less than 30 minutes, 1 hour, or even less than 24 hours after the roadblocks left, the terrorists hit them. Now, that tells you that there's a direct connection. I mean, a very direct connection between elements in the military and these terrorist attacks. I mean, the mistake is people are thinking that this is the first time it's happened because Governor Idris has mentioned it. No, I've got an eyewitness account of what has happened in various other communities. They said, yes, slightly before the terrorist struck, the roadblocks, the military, and everybody left the scene, only to allow the terrorists to have a field day. With regards to what happened in Niger State, Governor Bago is making he's trying to be clever by half when he says the school did not obey instructions and that is why the thing happened. He should be ashamed of himself. Bago should be ashamed of himself. The reason is this: more than half of Niger State, and I repeat, more than half of Niger State has been under terrorist command and control. Entire local government areas in Niger State pay taxes to these terrorists. And now the governor has the guts, the temerity to come and tell Nigerians that why did the school open because of, despite the government order. Which order is he giving? Where does he command in the state? He only sits down in the state capital and collects allocations without no separation, no reduction. All the local governments in Niger State continue to collect their allocations, despite the fact that about half of the entire state is under the terrorists. So we should be asking Governor Bako, the monies he's been collecting, who does he use it on? Where does this local government chairman in those areas, where do they stay? So we really appreciate the international focus on the terrorism in Nigeria, because it's going to reveal quite a few things. It's going to reveal the heartlessness. They don't give a damn what happens to people. Why am I saying this? In the midst of all this crisis, in the midst of all these killings and abductions, the federal government of Nigeria still had the guts to ask NYSC to call up youth to camps. As we are speaking, there are youths in camps in Kebbi, in Makurdi, in Benue State, in all these volatile areas. And the government knows that it is incapable of defending these camps. Yet it asks this it asks NYC to call up youth corpers. So what will happen? And I'm sure they have about 21 days to be in camp. I can bet with anybody that within a couple of days we'll be hearing gory tales about what happened in camps, about kidnappings. This government should be ashamed of itself for not taking Nigerians into consideration. What didn't they stop this color, this present color? I mean, do they want to sacrifice these students? And then when these coppers get kidnapped, what do we receive in return? We receive the heartless, tactless message of condolence from Mr. Tinubu, which he does not even write, for goodness sake. Because he can't write it. It's written by characters like Bola and Onuga. They will tell us, oh, how the president is depressed, how he feels the pains of the families, which we know is all nonsense. Because if he was depressed, if Mr. Bola Tinubu felt the pains of the families, what Mr. Bola Tinubu would have done was to ask the NYSC not to call up coppers in the midst of all this insecurity. So the reality is that we are now beginning to see the kind of characters who rule over us. And you mentioned with regards to the visit of the delegation to the United States. I mean, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Okay.
The IGP of police is in that delegation. He controls a police force of over 300,000 policemen. What has he done? He sits down in Abuja with his bulletproof vehicle.
All right, let's I'll have to come in here, Barrister. I have to come in here. Thank you. Let me get to Comrade. We'll come back to you. Comrade.
No problem. Yeah. Yes.
Comrade, you still with us?
Yeah. Good morning.
You know, one of the things that the primate said was he blamed the lack of a coordinated security response for the boldness with which we are seeing these days. You know, in the past week, we've seen how how emboldened these terrorists or these bandits have become. And of course, one of the things that Amaechi recently said was that the federal government doesn't have a political will to address this. What do you think about this? Do you think it's a matter of political will and government not having a political will? And he also supports this claim by the primate saying that there's a lack of a coordinated security response. Because if you have said, you of course saw what Governor Nasir Idris said, and is questioning why were the military personnel, why were they withdrawn at some point? Because you would actually expect that if a military personnel or if there was a security personnel or if there were security personnel at that point, they didn't have any reason to have left. But they left, and then just shortly after they left, the school was attacked. So what do you make of this?
Thank you very much. And the first point is that I don't think there's we are lacking in a coordinated response. Rather, I think that there's a coordinated attempt to undermine our security architecture. I say that because if you follow the timeline from the governor's accounts, the military men, because it was a border town school, because it was in the head of security challenge, at the height of security challenge, at all the border towns, there were military officers stationed in that girls' boarding school. Now, that they were withdrawn at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. they were withdrawn, and at 3:45 a.m. the same day, the same time. The bandits, the criminals, the terrorists, literally moved in and then killed the principal and manager and made away. The thing is that heads ought to be rolling with all due respect. Who ordered the withdrawal of those troops? It was a coordinated attempt. They were withdrawn almost about the same time those attack was made, meaning that there was a coordination. So I don't agree that there's no coordinated, there's a coordinated attempt to undermine the security and lives of Nigerian citizens. So, and I feel very bad about it. That's one. The second thing is that I agree with the person who spoke last, the barrister, that, you know, there's the reason why there a kind of helter-skelter in terms of running around in terms of, you know, government speaking up, visiting the US, is because of the renewed or increased attention based on definition of Nigeria as a country of particular concern. Maybe that's why we're not seeing some movement. But what is the outcome of those movements? That's my question. Are we getting better security now or getting things? In fact, I think that it's even getting worse now. Because within the last 1 week, we are hearing from Niger State School, from Kebbi State, and others. You know, so it means that there is some ratcheting up of attacks, particularly at soft targets. You know, schools. What is the crime of these children, particularly in these areas, in Niger, in Kebbi? What is their crime? That they chose to be educated, and the parents chose to. Because I think I have children in boarding schools. 2 of my children are in boarding schools. You know, because it's sometimes for communication's sake, you send them to boarding schools. You know, because there are times for reading. You know, they are regulated life basically. So it's not a crime to send children to school, for children to be in boarding school. It's a crime for failure to protect. What does government do for us basically? What is the obligation? Government is not the one that feeds me and my family. It's not the one that provides an accommodation for my family or makes a provision for my family. Government basic responsibility, which is the failing at, is the security of lives and property of citizens. That is the way the government is failing. So I think that we need to on a very serious, you know, find that the government needs to do more basically in unearthing the root causes of this criminality that we are seeing.
Point. You raised
genocide, or it is generally genocide. The fact that there are killings that are going on, kidnapping that are going on, with reckless abandon, and the government and the security services are unable to nip it in the bud, or at least prevent the occurrence, shows a failure at multiple levels. And that's, I think, where the real issue is. The failure to secure lives and property. What else will government do for us if it cannot effectively secure the life and property of the people? What else are you doing for us?
Interesting question
else?
indeed. We need to ask for them to tell us what exactly they do for it. Let's bring this conversation to the studio where we have Dr. Peter Anosike. Dr. Peter Anosike, in one of Buba Galadimawa's interview, it said something about how the Fulani stock went to meet the late former president to call him to come on to help them out. In his word, he says that the former president of Nigeria was using OPC to end them and, more like try to push them out and all that, especially in Kwara State. And that was what led to bringing on the president who was never interested in governance, in becoming a politician again. And the rest is history. We've also heard people during that administration make some statements when we have the power to nip the issue of insecurity on the bud. Some have come up to say that attack on Boko Haram is attack on the north. Some went further to say, like the likes of Pantami was of the opinion that you don't kill them. Attack on them is attack on us. So many things happen. The now vice president of Nigeria, where his house was, the state house, when he was the governor of Borno State, was where we met a kingpin. He was arrested there and all that. Do we think at this point that we're going to have a smooth ride in ending the issue of insecurity with some of the body language of some political elected officials and what is transpiring within the military? The ceasefire that some of the soldiers have come up to say dampens their morale or even leave them out there for them to be massacred, and a whole lot playing out there.
For me, I feel that the Tinubu government is being sabotaged. I feel that all efforts are being made to make his administration to look bad and weak. And this is the same thing that happened under Goodluck Jonathan between 2014 and 2015. Nigeria army, to me, are now on recess. They are now on break. Understand? Maybe they are protesting silently. And by protesting silently, it means we don't want service. Because from what happened to KB and to Niger, you can see that that is pure sabotage and nothing more. So it seems that they are not happy, and something needs to be done about it. And again, I also feel that these bandits want to, on their own, welcome American soldiers, hoping that it might even lead to regime change. This is what my mind is telling me. By escalating this means that they want American soldiers that will come. That's hoping that it could lead to regime change.
So in other words, you're saying that some people are out there to, like they said before to Jonathan, we're going to make your leadership ungovernable, will make this country ungovernable. Is that what it's playing out?
That's exactly what is happening now. Somebody was saying that Tinubu should relocate to KB. I say if he should relocate to KB, within a week he will relocate to all the states in the country. Because from KB he has to relocate to Niger. From Niger he has to relocate to Nasarawa and other states. So for me, it seems that the soldiers has withdrawn their service, or they are silently protesting, because from their one, the military is not happy with a policeman becoming the national security advisor. This is the first time it's happening in the country. Soldiers don't really respect policemen, understand me? Because they see them as a paramilitary. Now having to be taking orders from a policeman, I know from time that it will not work well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peter, for your submission. Barrister Ezeluchi, 6.57 trillion naira is what we have, spent in 2025. That was what we assigned, or what was there in the budget for defense in 2025. And also, the president has spent 800 and something million in importing new weapons into Nigeria to help fight insecurity. And one breath, some people were saying that the continuous de-radicalization process, a reintegration of terrorist people back into society, is a way to mark all the spending and all the effort of the government in helping to end the issue of insecurity in Nigeria. What do you have to say about that? As at this point, the terrorists is more like they've already gained a whole level of sympathizers. People like the likes of Sheikh Gumi is saying that we have to continue taking or passing through the non-kinetic measure to make sure we hold them, even suggesting an amnesty for terrorists in Nigeria for them to down tools. Help us actually and tell us what you make of this.
Thank you very much. Before I answer the question, I just want to mention something. You brought one so-called prophet who is always talking about political issues and never religious issues. I will advise that we don't give currency to such characters because they're just politicians who don the garments of prophecy. And with all due respect to Dr. Anosike in the studio, I think it is very wrong to say that anybody is trying to sabotage Mr. Tinubu's government. You really just asking the question, over 6 trillion in the budget for the military. Mr. Tinubu has the freedom to appoint the service chiefs who he thinks will deliver. So the service chief that has been on board for the past 2 years of his regime, he appointed them. Not just the service chief, but also the brigade commanders, the GOCs, General Officers Commanding. They are all appointed by him. So if he was even feeling that anything was being sabotaged, nothing stops him from even bringing in mercenaries from wherever, or even inviting countries, like even the US. Welcome them with open hands to help you. So it is very, very wrong for Nigerians to begin to insinuate any sabotage. If anybody is sabotaging the Tinubu regime, it is Bola Tinubu. Sorry, it is Bola Tinubu himself, by inaction, by inactivity, by doing things that will even stoke the embers of these crimes, of this violence. So let us stop that continued issue of trying to ascribe the crime to somebody else and not the person who is at the top, who the buck stops at his table. With regards to the funds being spent, you see, we have a very funny country with regards to military expenditure. All the military GOCs, Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Navy Staff, end up as billionaires. Billionaires, not even in Naira. They're multi-millionaires in US dollar terms. You see the former Chief of Staffs all buy houses in New York, in Dubai, in London, and all that stuff. Where do you think the money comes from? It's from the 6 trillion budget that has been spent. So you spend 6 trillion, and then where do you use the money on? Do you use it to train our soldiers? Do you use it to equip them? Do you use it to motivate them? The answer is no. Because on several occasions, we have seen what these soldiers have to contend with. The kind of food, the kind of rations. They even show it also on TV when they're in the forefront, in the battlefront. You send troops to the front. You don't even equip them. You don't give them proper sleeping or proper camping facilities. And you expect them to go and kill or to go and shoot terrorists? No, I mean, so the 6 trillion, Nigerians should just know that what has happened to the national budget happens to the 6 trillion. When you track how that money is spent, more than half of it ends up in the pockets of these commanding officers of the GOCs and all that stuff. That is why, for instance, a general, a retired vice admiral, can have such a huge mansion in Abuja that he can send his security detail to go and start insulting the minister of Abuja. Where did he get the money from? In other countries, I will give you an example. In the US, there was this black American who was the chief of defense staff in America. He was still repairing his hobby was to repair his old Volvo so that he can keep on moving. I mean, that is how generals are. And you see them, they are trained, they are focused. But with the characters we have here, as chief of defense, chief of army staff, they don't even look like soldiers. They are thinking of where to buy the next mansion in a foreign country. So don't let the figures spent or the figures allocated for defense scare anybody. It shouldn't, because bulk of it gets wasted or gets into wrong hands. And have previously advocated that when we have a serious government, all these multimillionaire generals should be tried appropriately for the crimes they have committed. Because when you send soldiers to the front and you don't equip them because you have stolen the money that was meant for these soldiers to operate you can be accused, you can actually be tried for manslaughter or for serious offenses, because that soldier that died in the forefront died because of your criminal actions. And go through the list, all the chiefs of staff, what do they do after serving as the chief of staff? He can now contest election as the president or governor of a state. That means he has become rich. And ask yourself, how much is the salary of these officers? So where did the money come from? Yes, it's unfortunate. Quite unfortunate.
Now, another thing people ask is, who will now try the president who went ahead to allocate these monies without proper supervision to make sure it's being utilized the way it should be? Who will now try the president who moved for that to even appoint some of those people that occupied?
No, I'm not saying try the president for allocating. It is good. It is good to allocate funds to the defense sector. But then a good president will set up a mechanism that will ensure that what you allocate is used for what it's meant to be used for. I mean, so it's good if the way we are structured now, if you allocate 10 trillion to make Nigerians safe, it's wonderful. But you have to manage, you have to follow up and know exactly how much that is used for what. Otherwise, you become culpable. You become an enabler of corruption. If you just release 1 trillion to the chief of defense staff and you don't monitor it, we will have nothing to believe than that you yourself as the president is going to get a kickback from it. Otherwise, when they don't do well, when they don't act well, you sack them. You sack them and you prosecute them. Not just you change service chiefs. Why did you change them? Were they culpable or were they complicit in crimes? If they were, try them. If you sack them or you retire them and you give them multi-million naira vehicles, give them emoluments, that means you loved what they did. So the service chief who went with so much billions in terms of armored vehicles, security personnel, and cash, that means Bola Tinubu loved what they did to have given them all those stuff. Otherwise, he would have held them culpable for the mismanagement of the humongous sums spent on security. Likewise, this current crop, he changed them, saying that they will do good, that he will give them marching orders. Which marching? Where are they marching? We've seen how far they have marched. So they are also not efficient. I can actually boldly say they don't know what they are doing.
Thank you so much, Barrister Ezeluche. Comrade Ibrahim Momo, let's get your opinion. Just what solution are you preferring for Nigeria for us to move forward at this point, for us to be out of this turmoil, this killings and this one-time killings and abduction that is facing us?
Well, for me, quite a number of recommendations are made. Specifically, I would say that we must have accountability for every kobo allocated and supposedly. If the monies are allocated just so that somebody can embezzle, then that is criminal in itself. You give over 6 trillion allocation to the military. We are not getting the public policy making process. Does not stop with the allocation of funds. In fact, that's about one of the early parts. Aside policy and the releasing of funds, you also have to evaluate what is the impact. For example, it could be that the money was not enough. It was the cost of inflation or whatever, but not to have an insight into how was the money spent. What was it spent for? Were there corruption? Did it get to the actual end user, or was the big men at the Abuja offices, the headquarters, the ones who sat on the monies, where they allowed the infantry to just go and die? There has to be some evaluation. There has to be some feedback mechanism of evaluating this money. What's the impact assessment? Basically. So the first thing is accountability, and I think we are failing grossly in that. The government cannot assume that the mere fact that they are banding figures around, release X amount of money for weaponry acquisition, X amount of money allocated to the security and defense sectors of our economy, means that all is well, we have done well. No! It couldn't be that you have also allowed for the corruption that is undermining by just releasing those funds. Where is the efficiency in the allocation? That's the first one. Secondly is that it is my opinion, my belief that everybody who takes security votes in this country must ensure that they put those money into security. I'm not one of those. I blame the president, as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. But I'm also aware that it is not the only person who has oversight over security. The governors of our states, what are they doing? Yes, for example, the governor of Kebbi State, if I'm not mistaken, was one who was saying that they had intel and they shared it with the security services, yet they withdrew the security. So it means that they have a role to play in security. What stops, for example, for well-equipped sub-nationals having, you know, they are earning more money now since the Tinubu administration, because of all the subsidies that Nigeria has denied. The governors, local government chairmen, they now have more money to play around with. What stops them from having local security outfits in place? They have the funds to recruit, to train, and to arm. They have the resources. Why are they not doing that? So all persons who are collecting security votes, the question is, what are we doing? What are governors? Governors take as much as billions. There's some states who have over $1 billion in terms of security votes monthly.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I have to cut in there. Okay, Dr. Peter, you want to quickly say something?
I want to say something because figures have been banded here. In budget, there's a difference between approve and dispose, understand me? At a point in time, under Obasanjo government, Tony Anene was the Minister of Works. So, and it was published everywhere that 300 billion was allocated to the Ministry of Works, and that all the roads in the country are bad. So everybody was accusing Tony Anene of embezzling all the money. Quite all right, 300 billion was approved, but what was disbursed was only 120 billion. So, but what everybody heard was 300. So these guys might approve a certain amount, but disburse a different amount. So we don't really know how much that was disbursed. Understand me? We don't really know how much was, and these people are not in the position that to come and speak for themselves. Understand?
Okay.
So that's one thing that we should understand.
Okay. We'll move on to the next conversation for today. Kanu behind bars, strict custody ordered, and of course dialogue urged in Southeast. We'll discuss this after this break. Stay with us.